to have you record it, and I think it's a different experience because you're the director, and so then there's teachers there, and so I think my experience was a bit different because I'm a teacher also. So then, like when we were talking about the article from last week on emotional intelligence and directors transitioning, and all of a sudden, they don't see you as on the same level anymore. So there's that fear. But I thought that you did a really nice job of introducing the purpose. And why is it that we're doing it? Are we doing it just because we want to critique each other? No, these are the purposes that we have behind it. One of them being that, we want to push ourselves to become better teachers. Another one being that there's visitors that are coming in and they're seeing our work together, but they're still kind of noticing that it is still kind of isolated. So while there is a feel of collegiality, there's still a missing piece where teachers aren't understanding what's happening in all of the classes. So I thought you did a really nice job of setting up the why. This isn't just because this is something I want you to do, especially in your situation, like I said, because you're the director. But instead to see it as how, why it's useful. Did you ever talk to them about what you were going to be presenting to them, what you would record, or what it was, how you were going to also participate in the videotaping of yourself?
I didn't, I wasn't intending to present anything to them because I didn't know anything I could that would be useful.
I see.
But I told them that I was videotaping that conversation there, doing kind of a meta level of the same thing in our GSE class.
Right.
And I wanted to videotape that.
Yeah.
So that they could see I'm doing this too. I'd actually thought about it, because there's 4 teachers in each group and then a 5th person.
Yeah.
And just wanted more people for more feedback.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what if the 5th person presents? And then I couldn't think of what that would be. And so, yeah. But I was hoping and showing, modeling not only my hopes and fears around it,
right,
for us, but modeling that I'm doing this too.
Right.
And I'm not comfortable hearing my voice on tape either.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, I appreciated definitely how you started off with this is my fear, and my fear is that, the videotaping piece too, and so you're connecting to them because it was the exact same in my group too. The videotaping thing kind of scares me, so especially because you had a group where 2 of the 3 voices that I heard were I hate being videotaped. And someone who was I have severe anxiety towards being videotaped. Yeah. So, so that I thought that part was very, very important. Would you consider, I wonder how your group would react if you said, I also want to videotape myself, but I'm struggling with what part of it, since I'm not in a classroom. If you presented that piece to them, if they would feel even a bit more open to it, because even though you showed them the piece of, or it modeled for them, I'm doing this because I'm getting this for my grad class and we're going to go through the same exact process, but they're still isolated from the process, that I think is the vulnerable part of them. It's showing their video.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that would be, even though it's hard, because it's
trying to figure out what that would be.
Exactly, because even you and me, we were okay, I'm what am I going to watch from him? When I found out that you were my critical friend, so I was how does that work? Yeah. But if you could figure out something else, I think that would maybe calm some of their fears too, because
I'm doing a lesson in Leah's.
Oh. That would be cool.
Yeah, I just thought about that. So yeah.
Because then it, but then it does what that article was talking about, it brings you back with them.
Yeah.
And so I think that might calm a little bit more of their fears. And I think maybe they would have more buy-in to it, because it's not just the director being a part of the consultancy or the critiquing part, but also you all also are going to be critiquing me. Yeah. And I want to hear what you have to say.
That's a good idea.
So I think it just makes people feel a little more safe.
Yeah. And it gets around. Yeah, I'm doing a lesson, so
yeah,
it gets around what to videotape.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really cool to see. noticed that Chris asked a question about, he was still trying to process the process. And I think that was his fear of, and that didn't come up in my group, so I thought it was interesting that it came up in your group, but I think, again, it's because of your role. You know, they were like, okay, well, once we have the videos, what are we going to do with them? You know, like, how's that going to work?
He had said, there's another piece where he said, because we did this in our credentialing class.
Yeah.
And some people hadn't looked at the protocol before they presented video, so it wasn't worthwhile.
Yeah.
So let's make sure we look at this protocol before we present, so we know what and it's like, I'll send it out, and
Yeah, so I thought that was an important question, and I didn't, like, it. That's true, like, okay, so we're videotaping our part, that's the scary part, but then the scary part is you're putting yourself up in front of everybody, so then I thought, like, that's a great question, you know, like, what are we going to do with it? Because I think, you know, like we saw, you covered the process of getting the material, but then not the actual, like, what happens once we have the material. So I thought that was an interesting question that he had. And, you know, you were very detailed and you have the protocol memorized, so you were able to tell him exactly what it was. I would have been like, I'm not quite sure, hold on, I'll find out. Where am I at? How was the body language? Because I saw Chris Olivas. I mean, oh my gosh, Chris Ulleda. Is that the second time? I think I called him Chris Olivas the other day too. But Chris Ulleda was the only one that I got to see, and he, you know, was Chris Ulleda, you know. But considering that the other two who brought up their anxiety, what was their? Could you get a feel of their body language and what was happening through that process?
You know, it was such a small. It's just the four of us, 5 of us at one point, because Brendan came in, sitting there, that I felt there was comfort. And we were joking, and Joanna was joking, and Haley was joking, and I think it felt good. Yeah, it felt warm.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could definitely tell that they weren't like, oof, immediately. Just
I mean, there was initial kind of like, what are we doing? And then when I think when I introduced it, they're like, okay. And Haley's like, you know what, I want to give it a go.
Good.
And so.
Good. That's awesome. That's exciting. And I think, you know, like, I think that piece again, like you kept reiterating, like, why are we doing this? And the fact that they were explained the piece that they are in control of what they bring. You know what I mean? Like reiterating that piece, like you're bringing the clip that you select. You could film the whole time, but you pick what you want us to view. You know, so that creates a piece of safety too.
Hopefully.
You know,
I was hoping to look at it as a piece of like when we do in the class of differentiation. Everyone's writing a short story. And you can write about whatever you want, or everyone's going to perform a poem. But the poem can be about whatever. So it's like there's a consistency in format and a much freedom with content. So.
Was there a reason, going back to that protocol question I had here, was there a reason why they didn't have the protocol, like, or just
didn't think about it.
Exactly.
No one did. It was like, oh
no, I didn't think about it either. I was like, oh, okay, like we'll introduce it. Okay.
I sent it out immediately after that.
I remember getting the email.
Yeah.
That's good. Did anybody email back about the protocol with concerns? Oh, okay. That's good. Let's see here. Yeah, so you gave them wide options also, because Haley asked the question of like, so we're really bringing a part where this is a challenging moment in our class, right? Like that's the kind of video you want. And you know, you did, no, you're in, again, you get to pick what you want. It could be something that you're doing awesome, that you do really well in, you know, or it could be a focus that you wanted on students. So I think that part also gave them a little bit of comfort. And going back to your question, like maybe lowered some of their fears, like, okay, it doesn't just have to be something that I'm struggling with, so that for those who were feeling like really, really uncomfortable, being able to pick something that they're really great at first, then I think that'd be an easier transition for them. Like, okay, let me celebrate my bright spots first, since I'm afraid and I'm terrified right now, you know, like, and get feedback on how I can improve that piece that I feel I'm strong in, and then next time around I can bring in something that I'm struggling with, which clearly makes us even more vulnerable, you know, as educators. and you shared your hopes and your fears. I appreciated your story of your previous experience.
Which one was that?
Going into like 10 to 12.
Oh yeah, when I started teaching.
Yeah, when you first started teaching, and also just even the purpose of, it's not just in education that we're using this type of technique, but we're also using it in, psychology. So it's not just the sole place that we're doing this. What I thought was interesting was when you were talking about the previous experience and bringing it back to why observations were so important. Looking at the question, I wonder how it could have been helpful to bring the group back to think about a helpful experience when they had in an observation. What it has been your previous experience with observation, whether it's been you traveling to classrooms or videoing, like
did.
Yeah.
But it was the way we started off was think about someone who you really admire, who you've learned something from, simply by watching them do what they do. And so So what I didn't do was close the loop. And so it was Haley shared about one of her friends who is this yoga teacher, and everyone shared something. And then, I guess I could have closed the loop by saying it now, flip it. And part of me feels like I was doing it because I don't want, more than anything out of this whole process, I think the greatest thing that we have, the way we can benefit is by watching others. And I realize I might be biased because that's how I learn. I learn so much more by watching others than I do by having others watch me. And giving me feedback. And so I'm very biased in that way. And I think I set it up that way too, of saying, and partly to, if someone is anxious, it's like, this isn't about people watching you. It's about you watching others.
Right.
And let's get across that bridge. And I can see where, if the group is ready, and I could bring them around too. So now let's think about when people have watched you, where it's been beneficial to you. So
Absolutely. Yeah, we did that in my group, and that happened because someone, when talking about one of the prompts that was on the sheet, I had brought it up, and so I was like, oh yeah, how about who else? Like, when was there a time when you felt like you were being observed, and what was that process like for you, and why did you appreciate it? So they had to think about a time where it was successful, because then all of a sudden they're thinking about like, yeah, that was good. I did learn this, so I can open up more to this. So it's that piece of like, okay, let me give this a try again. Like, there were good things that came out of this. So I just thought about that. I don't know if you had them write down their hopes and fears, but even I was curious as to if you did, how that worked, and then even if you didn't, like, I know it's small groups, so it would be still really weird to even just do like a pair share thing after writing down their hopes and fears, but I feel like it allows them to, like in the classroom, it allows them to think about the process first and like really solidify their answer, as opposed to it just kind of being like an immediate response.
Right.
So did you have them write it down, or was it just?
I can't remember. I probably should have, but I honestly don't remember.
Yeah.
Kind of had a conversation about hopes and fears in general, and it kind of went back and forth. People said, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Or, not so much that, but.
Yeah.
But that's always good to have some think time and processing time before sharing.
I think so too, especially because in that situation, then it could be where it's like that contagious factor where, one person says, oh, I don't like being videotaped, and then everybody else is going to jump on it. Whereas it's like, okay, well, what did you write down? Like, do you want to share what you wrote down?
Right.
And so I think it doesn't make it like this big group thing where it's just like, oh, I feel exactly the same way. But instead, like, this is what I wrote down, and this is why I wrote down, and this experience is just still different. And even then with like the hopes part, I mean, I think it was only Chris who shared his hope. And it might have just been the clip in the video, but in his hope was because he had already done this experience. And so I wanted to hear from from Haley and from Joanna and I don't know if you said Brandon was their leader.
Brandon, yeah, he showed up somewhere. I'm not sure if he's in the clip or not.
I didn't hear his voice. Yeah. So to hear their hope, because they both only shared their fear and they piggybacked off each other on their fear. So then it would have been interesting to just kind of encourage them to like seek out that hope. Like, okay, how else can we see that in order to maybe go back to to your question of, okay, you did a good job of recognizing their fears, but maybe calm it down a bit by recognizing also their hopes too, and them recognizing their hopes too, and then being like, okay, I'm afraid, but how can I make this work for us or for me? So yeah. But I mean, I think you definitely recognize their fears by modeling your fear, and that was what their fear was of the anxiety.
Everyone knows. It's like,
yeah, exactly. And there's like, Haley was like, yeah, like the nasally voice. So if you would do that piece again, what do you think you would have gone back to do differently, or keep it the same? Or?
Well, I definitely think that having the protocol there, it's like, if someone wants it, that's not the big thing. That's like a detail down the road. If you want it, here it is. Yeah. But I think having everyone write down a hope and a fear, and then sharing out, making sure that we get to the hopes.
Right.
So I know that Chris did. I know that I did. I know that Haley did. I don't think Joanna ever got your hope.
Yeah.
And that is important, right?
Yeah.
Focusing on a hope being the anti-fear.
Yeah.
It's like it's the opposite of.
Right.
That would be really, really crucial.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it, and it's part of just being a better listener.
Yeah.
It's like, ask for hopes and fears, and I'm hearing fears.
Right.
So what else is there?
Yeah.
And I also like the idea too of going beyond saying I'm doing this too, but how can I do this with this group?
Right.
So now I have to create a space for that to happen. Another meeting time.
Yeah.
I wonder if that will work too with Holly and Sarah.
Yeah. Well, Holly's in my group, and so is Annie, Dave's student teacher.
Oh, okay.
And so I saw them, and I'm like, I want this to be valuable for you guys too, and I'm like, I would love to get, have you guys participate also. And so Holly was on it immediately. She's like, I would love to. She's like, because what if I'm not always at High Tech High? Like, I need to be in front of a classroom. Like, I mean, with the special ed credential, I'm going to be a teacher, special ed teacher. So I wanted to learn. She's like, and she talked about her pieces of like how she goes in and like learns from everybody else too. And then Annie was like, well, I'm not really teaching quite yet. And like, but you're working with students, like you're interacting with them. So maybe even just like, those small groups that you work with, or a specific student that you pull out and you work with, like maybe we could do something like that in order for it to be inclusive, and so that they also feel like I'm getting something out of this too. Like, I'm not just giving, I'm also getting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll talk to them and see if they, the 4 others, Holly, Sarah, Andrea, isn't there another group? 4 groups of 5 groups of 4. There's someone else anyway,
Yeah, so.
Alejandra, that's what it was,
There you go, yeah.
Cool, great idea.
So, it'll be interesting. Thank you very much for sharing.
Alright, sorry about the video.
No, at least we got to hear it. I'm happy. The first time I'm like, Robert, I know you have like bad hearing.